Title: Fractured Devotion. Episode 2. Dawn painted the city in pale lavender and mist as Sloan and Carter slipped through back alleys toward the hideout. Carter had secured an unremarkable flat in a rundown Victorian terrace, 2 floors above a corner shop that sold stale pastries and unbranded cigarettes. The building's peeling fog and warped floorboards betrayed its age, but inside, Carter had installed reinforced locks, a secure line, and a small stash of essentials. It was far from glamorous, but it was safe for now. Neither spoke until they reached the top of the stairs. Sloane's legs trembled with exhaustion and adrenaline, and Carter guided her to a battered armchair by the window. He crouched in front of her, brushing a lock of hair from her forehead. "You did brilliantly," he said gently. Her pulse still thundered beneath his palm. Her voice came in a whisper. "Did I?" She closed her eyes, recalling Asa's furious roar, the relentless pounding of his guard's boots, the ache of Carter's fist against her shoulder when he tried to protect her. "I nearly got us killed." Carter shook his head. "You didn't. You outsmarted him. You got us out." Sloane's breath hitched as she stared at him. The night had changed something between them, stripped away her defenses and made her raw. She felt exposed, and yet safer with Carter than she ever had in Asa's mansion. He pressed something into her hand. She looked down to find his phone. Unlocked, a single message draft on the screen. "I need backup now. It's loaded with a covert channel," he explained. "Once you're steady, I'll send it." She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Okay." Carter rose and moved to the small kitchenette. He poured 2 mugs of instant coffee and handed one to her. They sipped in silence, listening to the hum of traffic below. Outside, the street began to stir, a newspaper boy whistling a jaunty tune, the clang of the corner shop's shutters being pulled up. The normalcy clashed with the storm still raging. In Sloane's chest, "How long until they arrive?" she asked, voice tight. He checked his watch. 12 hours, maybe less. "Dee's moving fast." He paused, scanning her face. "You rested at all?" Sloan shook her head. "I tried, but..." She trailed off, rubbing her temples. Memories of the interrogation cell, Asa's cruel whisper against her neck, and Carter's rescue surged through her mind. He sat beside her, concern in his eyes. "You need to sleep." She forced a tired laugh. "Sleep? Sounds like a fairy tale." Carter reached for her hand. "I'll stay up." "You rest." She studied him, tears pricking her eyes. "You don't have to." He squeezed her hand. "I choose to." Sloan closed her eyes, leaning back. Carter settled into the armchair across from hers, the rifle he kept by his side on the floor, barrel aimed at the door. The quiet was heavy, punctuated only by the hiss of the kettle on the stove and their synchronized breathing. Eventually, the tension in Sloane's shoulders slackened, and in the fragile border between sleep and wakefulness, she drifted off. When Sloan awoke, the sky had turned the brilliant blue of mid-morning. Carter was still watching the door, silent but alert. He offered her a plate of cold toast and scrambled eggs, his version of hospital food, apt for a recovered hostage. "Thank you," she murmured, accepting the plate. He watched her eat, concern evident in his gaze. "We need a plan." Sloan looked up. "We wait for the D." He shook his head. "Not only that, we're going to confront Asa." Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. "Confront him? Are you mad?" Carter met her eyes with quiet determination. "He thinks he owns you. He thinks he can do whatever he wants. That ends now." Sloane's heart pounded. Confronting Asa was suicide. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to cling to the safety of this dingy flat. And yet, something flickered inside her, a glimmer of defiance. How? She whispered. He laid out his plan in terse sentences. Lure Asa into a public place where he'd be vulnerable. Use the D backup to arrest him. Ensure Sloan's testimony was solid enough to keep him behind bars for life. As he spoke, Sloan's fear wavered, replaced by purpose. She realized how hollow her existence had become under Asa's thumb. His money, his control, his obsession. She had lost herself. Now, with Carter at her side, she felt the first stirrings of reclaiming her life. They spent the afternoon preparing, Carter contacting his colleagues, checking equipment, mapping escape routes. Sloan assisted, surprising herself with how readily she absorbed the new reality of allyship and resistance. That evening, as dusk bled over the rooftops, Sloan dressed in a dark coat and jeans, her uniform of defiance. Carter handed her a small recording device. Hold on to this. She nodded, heart thundering. They walked to a nearby square lined with cafes and family homes, the air smelling of roasting chestnuts from street vendors. Under the pretense of meeting Carter for evidence transfer, Sloan sat at an outdoor table, the device taped beneath. Carter stood in the shadows, eyes on the street entrance, time stretched. Sloan sipped her coffee, nerves electric. The plaza's clock chimed 8 times, each toll reverberating like a warning. Then she saw him, Asa Jackson, appearing as if conjured, slipping through the crowd with effortless grace. He wore a tailored coat over a dark turtleneck, the collar turned up, his dark hair combed back. He glanced around, and his gaze locked onto Sloan. He strode toward her, the murmurs of late-night patrons fading in her ears. As he approached, colleagues and onlookers glanced curiously at his confident stride and close-fitting clothes. Unaware of the D agents stationed in plain clothes nearby, he saw only Sloan. With a predator's smile, he slid into the seat opposite her. Sloan's heart pounded, but she met his gaze calmly. "Asa," she said softly. He studied her, amusement and irritation warring in his dark eyes. "Enjoying your freedom?" She took a breath. "I have something to say." Asa leaned back, folding his arms. "I'm listening." Sloan pressed a button on the recorder. "This is me, Sloan Turner. It ends tonight." Asa's smile faltered. He leaned forward, voice low. "You belong to me." "Not anymore." Sloan's voice was steady. She recounted every violation, every manipulation, every moment of cruelty she'd endured, and every instance she'd come to care about Carter. She spoke without tears or tremors. Her words were both indictment and declaration of independence. Across the square, Carter watched through binoculars. He tapped his wrist code for agents in position. Asa's face darkened. "You think you can testify against me?" Sloan stood, voice ringing clear in the hush that fell over the terrace. "Yes." Asa's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with brutal force. Sloan clenched her teeth against the pain, but she held her ground, staring him down. That moment, plainclothes agents emerged from shadowed doorways surrounding the table. Asa's other hand went to his coat, but it was too late. He froze. As agents bore in, drawing handcuffs, Sloan watched as Asa's fury flared first in his eyes, then across his face like a storm breaking. He stood abruptly, knocking the chair back. "You can't do this," he roared, but the agents were unshaken. They cuffed him firmly and read him his rights. Sloan felt a rush of unexpected calm as she watched him go. Only when the agents escorted Asa away, head bowed but still radiating menace, did Sloan allow herself to breathe. She sank back into her chair, Trembling as relief and exhaustion washed over her, Carter appeared at her side, concern melting into pride. He knelt before her, lifting her hand. "You did it." Sloan closed her eyes, tears she'd held back spilling. "Over. We did it." He wrapped her in a gentle hug, and for the first time in months, Sloan felt the weight of fear lift from her chest. That night, in the hush of Carter's flat, they sat side by side on the sofa, the recorder safe in a desk drawer, the streets outside finally quiet. Sloan leaned against Carter's shoulder, dizzy with relief and something more hope. As the city lights glittered beyond the window, she vowed to rebuild her life on her own terms. And though the path ahead was uncertain, she knew that with Carter beside her, she could face whatever darkness remained and finally claim the freedom she had longed for. Sloan awoke to the sharp ring of her phone cutting through the dawn quiet. She lay motionless for a moment, heart thrumming, until Carter's gentle hand brushed her shoulder. "It's me," he murmured, his voice soft in the half-light. She sat up, swinging her legs over the side of the bed. The flat felt unfamiliar now, once a refuge. It had become a crossroads between her former life and whatever waited ahead. "Good morning," Carter said, handing her the phone. On the screen, the caller ID blinked. D Field Office. Her breath caught. "What is it?" "Go ahead." Sloan tapped the green icon. "Sloan Turner, Agent Turner." The voice on the line crackled with official briskness. "Your testimony was invaluable. We're finalizing the case against Jackson. You may receive a subpoena to testify in open court. We need to discuss protection details." Sloan's stomach tightened. She forced calm into her voice. "I understand. We'll arrange transportation for your brother's care and relocation once this is over. Expect a call with specifics later today." When she hung up, Carter was waiting, concern in his eyes. "Okay." She ran a hand through her hair. "They'll want me in court." He nodded. "We'll be ready." As she dressed, Sloan's thoughts turned to brother Jake. The last she'd heard, he'd improved enough to be discharged to a rehabilitation facility, funded entirely by the D. Finally, his prognosis seemed hopeful, but the thought of leaving him again tightened her chest with guilt. Carter noticed her hesitation. "He'll be fine," he assured. "You'll see him soon." She managed a small smile. "Yeah." By mid-morning, Sloan found herself in a cramped conference room at the field office. Across the table, a protective detail, a cadre of stern-eyed agents, laid out her schedule: secure transport for Jake, relocation options, court dates, new identities if necessary. Sloan listened, numb with relief and dread. When the meeting ended, Carter caught her arm. "Lunch?" She hesitated, then nodded. Outside, the crisp spring air felt like an intrusion, but she welcomed it. They walked to a nearby cafe, humble, sunlit, unremarkable. Carter ordered black coffee. Sloan chose herbal tea. They sat at a small table by the window. "Their plan sounds solid," Carter said. "You won't have to see Asa again." Sloan stirred her tea, eyes on the swirling steam. "I thought I'd feel freer, but I still feel trapped." Carter reached across the table, covering her hand. "You're still healing. It'll take time." She looked up, surprised by the tenderness in his gaze. "Time," she echoed, voice soft. He pressed his thumb into her palm. "We'll take it one day at a time." Sloan nodded, but a flicker of unease stirred in her stomach. As they left the cafe, a man in a dark overcoat brushed past her too closely. When she glanced back, his eyes locked on hers for a fraction of a second before he melted into the crowd. "That felt off," she murmured. Carter scanned the street. "Keep moving." They hurried toward the subway, nerves taut. Sloan tried to shake off the feeling, but every pedestrian seemed to hide a secret. Back at the flat, Sloan unpacked a small duffel bag with essentials the agents had provided, a change of clothes, toiletries, a burner phone. As she folded a sweater, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You can't run forever, Sloan." Her blood ran cold. She showed the message to Carter, who paled. "They found you." Sloan slid down against the wall, heart pounding. "How?" "I've been so careful." Carter knelt beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "We'll figure this out." He took her burner phone and scrolled through contacts, only the D line and the new safe numbers. The message's sender was untraceable. "They want to scare you," he said, voice low. "But we'll protect you." Sloan leaned into him, but dread lay heavy across her chest. That evening, under the steady glow of a single lamp, Sloan reviewed her statement for court. Pages of typed testimony detailed every manipulation, every threat, every moment Asa had crossed her boundaries. She forced herself to read each line, to relive the events without flinching. Carter sat across the room, sketching a floor plan of the courthouse preparedness, his armor against uncertainty. As she finished, her eyes stung with tears. Carter set aside his notes and crossed to her. "Done," she nodded, closing her laptop. "I want to get this over with." He pulled her to her feet and kissed her forehead. Soon, they decided on a late dinner at home takeaway, Thai noodles and spring rolls. Carter lit a candle on the coffee table, lending the room a soft, reassuring glow. Sloan picked at her noodles, appetite gone but forcing herself to eat. Halfway through the meal, her burner phone buzzed again. She silenced it reflexively, refusing another jolt of fear. Carter noticed. "You need to see it," he said gently, reluctantly. Sloan checked the screen, a photo of her brother's hospital room, taken from outside a window. She dropped the phone, hand shaking. "Oh my God," she breathed. Carter snatched it up, eyes blazing. "We need to move him now." Sloan's heart broke at the sight of Jake's pale form on the screen. "He's safe, he's safe." Carter rose, grabbing his jacket. "I'm going to the field office. We'll relocate him tonight." Sloan followed, tears streaming. "I'm coming. Stay here. I can't have you in the crossfire." She bit her lip. "No, we do this together." He hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." They dashed out into the night, hailing a cab to the rehabilitation facility. En route, Carter coordinated with agents via burner phone, setting a diversion. When they arrived, uniformed officers greeted them at the door. Sloan rushed inside to Jake's room. He lay asleep, wires and monitors humming. She knelt by the bed, brushing his hair aside. "He's okay," an agent assured her. "We're moving him to a more secure location." "You've done the right thing by coming." Sloan nodded numbly. Carter stood behind her, one hand on her back. As they left the facility, Sloan's shoulders sagged with the weight of helplessness. She had saved him once, but the price had almost been too high. Carter hailed another cab, and they settled into the back seat. Sloan closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I can't lose him," she whispered. Carter tightened his arm around her. "You won't." Back at the flat, they waited for confirmation that Jake had arrived safely. Time crawled. Sloan stared at her phone, willing it to ring. Carter paced the room, brow furrowed. Finally, the burner lit up with an unknown incoming number. Sloan seized it. "Jake's safe," the voice on the other end reported. "He's settled in. Full protection detail." Relief crashed into her like a wave, and she sank onto the sofa. Carter exhaled, a hand pressed to his chest. Sloan buried her face in her hands. "It never ends." Carter knelt before her, lifting her chin. "It will. We'll make sure of it." She looked into his eyes, steadfast, determined, unwavering, and something inside her shifted. Fear still lingered in the corners of her mind, but now it was tempered by trust. Outside, the city's hum lulled them into an uneasy calm. Sloan and Carter sat together, holding each other close, two souls forging hope in the wreckage of obsession and violence. And though Asa's shadow still reached for them, they knew that as long as they stood side by side, they could face whatever the darkness dared to send next.